introduce to you from the Netherlands Ironman member Hans Nordsiek, the storyteller. He's the author of the interactive children's book, The Pilot, with the 5 Stripes. The book comes with an app, and that makes the story even more exciting. On his YouTube channel, Hans presents educational children's programs with his Hans puppets in a very playful way. It's really a pleasure to watch. Before the lockdown, Hans has traveled around the world with his stage group and the Old Crow. That's an old Boeing out 1943. And children from all over the world attended his educational theater performances. Hans' goal is to stimulate imagination in children. Hans, you recently told me that during the lockdown you discovered that fantasy disappears in adults. You told me that by reading mythology, we can reactivate our fantasy.
Yes, hello everybody. Great to be here and to share the story today. It's the story I tell about mythology. It's of course it's connected with my life. About 30 years ago, I discovered the power of mythology, and since then I use mythology as the blueprint of my life. And today, 61 years old, the result is what you see here. That is the result of actively involving mythology in your life. And mythology is not so much something that you have to learn by heart, you have to study. It's more like a vitamin. It's like a good wine. When you drink it, when you eat it, it happens like magic. It comes down like magic. Given the status of the world and given my experiences with children, and also given the fact that I'm not physically able to travel into the world, I find other platforms to show myself. And that's also the story of mythology. Mythology always encourages you to manifest yourself as you are at that moment. And that's now, and tomorrow it has to be different because tomorrow there's another day. The magic word connected with that is the liberty of thinking, action, and speaking. And I wrote the book. Thank you for addressing that. And that was the book is for children, and that's with the message of getting your creativity and your imagination alive. And I'm convinced that nowadays also we adults, we also need a new push towards looking at the world from a childish point of view and getting your fantasy and your creativity alive. And mythology can play a major role in that.
What do you have an example about a story that can show us that has a parallel with our daily life?
Yes, one of the stories from mythology is called The Little Prince. It's from a famous aviator and writer from the 1930s, 40s. And that story is what makes it so, and the story has been translated in many languages. Millions of books were sold all over the world. And the simplicity and the childish look that's in that book, it's about the little prince that is wandering, floating through the universe and lands on the earth and tells with childish eyes what he sees. No bias, it's not biased in the view. And the simplicity of it that makes it so powerful. And that would be for me one thing out of it, that less is more. The essence of the book is so simple that's also it sells very good. It's not complicated. And now we go into a world that all like social media, like YouTube, everything seems to be complicated. Our lives seem to be complicated, etc., etc. And that's a dead-end road. That is what the story of the Little Prince tells us. That's a dead-end road. Please come back and see that the world is easy and understandable, and look to it from a child's eye. So that is the motivation of the Little Prince.
Yes, but what I loved in the story is about the businessman. He was counting. Yes. He was counting the stars.
Yes.
And by counting the stars, he believed the stars were his own, and he get more and more stars. So That's something we have to think about today, won't we?
Absolutely. No, and let me give you an example from my life, how I got the power of this Little Prince story. And I was an airline captain for many years. I told it before, serious four-stripe captain. And when you have to make an announcement to the people, the public address to 425 people in the airplane, if from a perspective of the serious pilot, you are going to give information, how high, how fast you fly, or what time you land, etc., etc. And we know by experience that this is rated by most of the people with a low value, because nobody is waiting for that information anymore. And we do our best. Next time I give more information. I give the altitude exact. I give the speed exact. I give more and more information, more and more. And you think that is the way to go, more and more and more. And then I was thinking about the Little Prince, and he was knocking on my head. They say, Hans, what do the people in your airplane need? Do they need information, or do they need something else? What would you need if you're there? Well, if I would sit in the cabin, I want to feel and know that I'm safe.
Yes, security.
I want to feel and know that there's a human in the cockpit. I want to feel and know that if we are late, that I will get my next airplane, that I have things that are important for me. Aha, and then the Little Prince told me, okay, now take the microphone again and talk from your heart and not from your head. And that's what I try to do. Instead of telling what, I started to concentrate on how to tell it. And every time I had a sneezy nose, I told a different story, and tomorrow I will tell another different story. This is a good example that you can put it to use right away in your life.
So the solution could be that when we are in our businesses and we are professionally working every day, we think more about the stories we had as a children's book, or more like the old mythologies that we read that, and we see it as a mirror for our lives as well. And how can we find that connection again? What would you suggest us that we find the way back to the fantasies, and to what would you do? How can I do it? How can I learn it?
Well, the one beautiful suggestion I got from the famous mythology expert, Mr. Joseph Campbell, and he died already some years ago. He said, "No, if you start to take a book of mythology and you start to read it, and after 1 hour, 2 hours you get bored, then it's nothing for you. Now that it's okay, then it may come back later." And he gave one good example. A great way to start is go into the library, and nowadays go to Google and find a book with poems in it, poetry. And just go through them and find one. If you read it, that wow, it has an impact on me. I find it more than fun. You find there's beauty in those words. And then he said, very important, then read it, that you remember it by heart, that you can tell other people the next day. So that way you inhale the story or the beautiful words, and next time you exhale it. And that is how it integrates in your system. It works very good. I found many years ago, I found a beautiful poetry from a Dutch writer, and I still know it. Well, that was, and then the magic happened to me. So that would be a good example.
You mean you wrote a book, and afterwards the magic happened? What magic happened?
Now I've read the book about with poetry in the poems.
Right.
And one of them I learned that by heart. It was written by a famous writer in Holland, and then I learned that by heart. And so that I could tell other people the next day about the poem.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I can still do it, and it still has an emotional touch, and it is that simple. And also make somewhere the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 decision. Okay, I'm going to integrate it, because you need to tell yourself, I want to go on that path. Yeah.
So at after all, there is a history of mythology. In the very, very past, we had the old stories about mythology. And
Yeah.
then, for my understanding, it turned into religion. And what can you tell us something about that? How did it evolve through the years?
Yeah, there are, in mythology, there are two essential things in it. That the message in mythology is timeless. It is about the compass of life, and that is a timeless message. It's as applicable today as it will be in 2 million years from now. The tool how to convey that message, that should always be different. That should always adapt to the time period where you're in. Nowadays, I use airplanes to tell my stories. You couldn't do that 2,000 years ago, because people couldn't relate to airplanes, so you use other things. Well, in the last thousands of years, by some movement in time, people, and it's a long story, short story, people started to take the mythological stories about dragons, about kings and queens, the whole metaphoric part of it. They start to take it literally, about the stories of the devil, etc., etc. And that is what mythology warns you. If you take it literally, then things go terribly wrong. So one of the results, if you take mythology literally, then you'll get dogma, you'll get religion. And I studied the major religions in the world, and if you go back to the origin of all of them, and it takes a long time to see that the origin of all these religions is mythology, and then it was frozen in time. Instead of fluent, it started to be frozen, and then it's a dogma. And then you turn the beautiful beast into a dragon. Then mythology will hit you and kill you, will go against you. So that's a good example of if you take mythology literally, you freeze it, then you get religion. And then we think, oh, there is a divine something outside me. People call it God, and mythology always says, everything I tell you, there's only one world you have. It's your world. You don't have any other world. You have only your world. You can perceive with your senses. So the God or the divine part, or everything that is written in mythology, it's always about the person, and the person in relation to his family, to his group, to his village, to his nation, and to the universe and to nature.
Okay, so can we understand that in the beginning, mythology was about a free-spirited thing, and then later on, religions and governments used stories from the past to organize and structure and dominate people?
Yes, it is that severe and tragic, and also it's part of life. Yes, no, the consequence is more than religion. It's also the government. When you take things literally, and then you get the world as we know today. And although most of the people, some not, we do our best. We're still in this loophole, in this prison.
Okay, so you do I understand well that you say by reading again the old mythologies and getting the free spirit and the imagination, we free ourselves and we can live a more free life than we do if we don't?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And one thing mythology does is, we said already, it connects you with who you are and with everything that's around you. And to see you as a free spirit, that you have your manifestation as a free spirit is the number one gift of the universe. And it also connects you with the great year, or the big year. And that is a year that goes over 25,800 years. Not many people we know. It's not being educated at the schools. And it's so important because it defines over thousands of years the seasons of this part of the universe. And one thing is the climate change that we witness, and we think, oh my, something very bad goes wrong. Climate change is part of this huge seasons. And we humans, we sometimes one day flies, we look 1 year front, 1 year back. Well, if you look for thousands of years to the front and to the back of life, then you see these big seasons going up and down, following like the sinus form. And it's about awareness. Mythology says, I want you to be aware that you're part of this big flows. You're just part of it. You cannot change the thunderstorms in August, and you cannot change the big streams. In fact, you need to connect with these big streams. And that's what happened the last thousands of years. We started to disconnect from mythology, and we started to disconnect from the big streams of life. Wow. And then things went terribly wrong. So we think we are the top of the creation. We humans, we think that, without realizing we are part of the creation. I am convinced that mythology needs to find her natural place in the world, and we also have the obligation to change what they said, to use modern tools like social media, like emails, like digitalizing, to convey that message again. And mythology also said, if you do that, young children will resonate with that. It will always land in fertile ground. I remember about 20 years ago that we had the minister president, Wim Kok, and he was minister president of a country. Yeah. And he said he was facing an issue, and he was in the top of the political pyramid. He was up there. And I remembered he saying that, well, it was a huge story, a huge issue he had to face, and he found a solution. And he said later, I said, well, I could only find the solution by being aware that I was the only person that could find a solution. There was nobody else being able to help me. I was in that position. I realized that. And that is totally, that resonates with a story of, and Bert Barton knows, the theater maker knows a lot about your life is climbing a mountain. Right. And if you want to go to the summit of your life, that last part is you have to do it by yourself. Nobody can help you. Yeah, and there's a good reason why you have to do that by yourself, because then if you're climbing the last part of the mountain, and Mr. Wim Kok, he realized that, then you get the natural strength and creativity and imagination that you deserve. It's the power of the need that will drive you towards that. And given modern social media, we tell young kids, at least the kids get the message that, I'm 11 years old, I have an iPhone, I already know everything. And then you don't get the life that you deserve. You need to know that certain parts in your life you have to do by yourself, and you will be very lonely, and being lonely is painful and very helpful, because you will learn, prosper, and grow.
And actually in the mythology, it's always about growing and walking your path towards the summit, isn't it?
Yes.
Wow.
There's this, and it's metaphoric. And
right.
If you're lost in your life, and we have that all the time. We all realize.
It happens to everyone if you're living long enough.
Yeah, no. If you're lost in your life for some reason, you lost your husband or bad things, and this is a story of you sitting in a huge forest, and there are all trees around you. You cannot see far. There are too many trees. You see the trees you cannot see far away, and you're standing in the middle of the forest, and you're crying out loud, "I need help! I want somebody telling what to do." And you stand still, and you're very angry and very mad at life. Why is I'm alone and alone, alone, alone? You're going to sit and you're disappointed. Then nothing happens. And then suddenly out of something, and that's mythology says, there's a spark in you. There is a spark in you that will take you up and get you going. And you need to take that step. And you get alive. It's the 100 years sleep, and you get out of the sleep, and you start to be aware. Okay, now I have no idea what I want. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to take the first step. And this person in the forest, he takes the first step, and then suddenly there's this little fantasy figure coming towards him. He said, what are you doing here? Well, yeah, well, I'm here to help you. Well, why didn't you tell me to go when I was sitting? Yeah, but I can only help you when you start moving.
Right.
And then the little fantasy figure says, okay, well, I want to go there to a beautiful lake. Okay, then you need to go, that's there to the right, to the right, to the right. So this is a very beautiful motivation
and life lessons.
A life lesson that if you wait for life to get what you deserve, nothing will happen. And you need to take a step into the unknown, and then the doors will open and you will get help. Universe and mythology guarantees that you will get help.
Wow. Hans, if people see this and want to get connected to you, or want to maybe ask you how to find their path, would you help them?
Of course. I would love to help anybody in a private, because I also think that these messages of life can also be applied to the business world. So I love to help everybody.
Yes, I'm asking because you were traveling with for children, right? That was what you did the last year. You were building a wonderful children's book, and so you were really putting energy into children to let grow their imagination. But you're also open to adults who realize that nowadays we have these speed reading courses. I really don't like that, because when you really do a speed reading, you do not put time into your imagination by reading. So I believe that we get a little bit lost at this moment with this trends to do everything quick, do everything on the internet. And I really love the internet, and we can use it to bring our story forward, of course. Mm-hmm. But I completely agree with you that we have to be aware that we have to take a time out here and then from the multimedia and sit back and read a book and let flow the imagination. But maybe somehow some people do not find that door to open that, and you could help them by that. I understand.
I will do my best. What can we guarantee in life? And I'll guarantee that yes, I will do my best. I will share my fascination, my enthusiasm about it. And now to make it for me personal, somehow I find the urge of telling this story here now to everybody. And when I do that, I feel 5 times as powerful as I normally are. And that's a very good indication that you're in tune. You start to resonate with something that's far more big than what you are. So in this way, I cannot do else than this now. And more than the power of the will, I want to do this. It's the power of necessity, and that's far more powerful. If a woman gives birth to a child, it's not because she wants it, because it's a huge natural necessity that it comes out. I feel the same when I talk about this. It is a necessity, and I'm a servant of getting this out in life.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Hans, for your time and for this wonderful explanation about what we can get out of mythology and use it in our daily lives. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.